I actually was molested at a very young age, at like 8 years old. So my identity was already stripped from me.
Yeah.
And as I got older, I got into abusive relationships because I had no boundaries. I didn't have really a self identity. When I had my first son, I knew that things had to change. So I began to really invest in myself.
I think this is something that a lot of people just don't correlate. Like your experiences when you're young, abuse of any kind, especially
Mhm.
sexual abuse, it definitely strips you of your identity, but of your boundaries because people have taken it from you so early. And so you have no sense of, I am an autonomous person and I do not have to
Mhm.
accept crummy behavior, toxic behavior because that's all you've known.
Yeah. And I think more people need to give their children more autonomy to say no, because
Yes.
especially in the Black community, that's
Yes.
seen as talking back. You respect your elders. You give people hugs when you don't want to. That's also to me is now that I look at it, is crossing boundaries. Like you're not
Yes.
allowed to say no. I don't want to hug. I don't want to kiss. Even if it's your family, if your child doesn't feel comfortable, you shouldn't force that upon them because you're teaching them it doesn't matter what you want. You have to.
And I just posted on my social media that sometimes you have to break up with people in your life in order to break up with burnout because they are often the cause of it. And then when I started to recognize that I've never enjoyed life, like full on enjoyed life, like a kid at a playground, I lost that whimsy and that joy and the sense of being alive because
Yeah.
life just felt too hard. Hello and welcome back to the Self-Care Oasis podcast. I'm your host, Samantha Gregory, the self-care alchemist, tech wellness consultant, helping women transform burnout into better boundaries, more balance, and shameless bliss through radical self-devotion. I am here with another guest this week. Her name is Nicole Jones, and I'm excited to have this conversation because we're going to be talking about boundaries. We're going to talk about losing yourself or not losing yourself in relationships or in other areas of your life where burnout tends to crumble your sense of self and identity. So, welcome, Nicole. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're very welcome. So, I like to always ask my guests to please introduce yourself. Tell us who you are, what you do, and how you are transforming the world, especially the world of Black women.
Thank you. My name is Nicole Jones, and my business is Noteworthy with Nicole, which is basically a mindset coaching program. And I specialize in helping high achieving women identify themselves outside of their roles, whether it's a C suite executive, a mom, a sister, and help them really identify what needs to happen to bring themselves back to who they are outside of those identities. So we go over burnout, we go over boundaries, we go over self care, and basically putting yourself first as a priority.
Absolutely. See, that's all right down my lane. It is aligned. I was just saying how so aligned this is. And I think so many more women are coming to this conclusion that we must put boundaries in place. We must reclaim ourselves and stop losing ourselves in these different roles. So,
Yes.
before we go deep into that, was there a point in time in your life where you lost yourself and or your sense of identity through burnout or just the multiple roles that you were playing?
I'm going to go back further from when I was younger. I actually was molested at a very young age, at like 8 years old. So my identity was already stripped from me.
Yeah.
And as I got older, I got into abusive relationships because I had no boundaries. I didn't have really a self identity. When I had my first son, I knew that things had to change. So I began to really invest in myself. I went back to school, got an education, had my second child. And during these times, I was married, but I ended up having a failed marriage. And I really took a sabbatical from dating, from giving anybody else my attention besides my children and myself. And I really poured into myself. By going back to school, I became really involved in church. I sought out therapy. It's just all basically things that I took upon myself to make the change because I was really tired of living that life and really not understanding why I was living this life, why I didn't have boundaries, why I was accepting everything that was given to me, that I really didn't have to take it, but it was something that I just thought I should accept or what I thought I deserved at the time. So it was really just a transformational process for myself. And then the work that I was doing at the time, I was a college counselor. So I was helping other families and people maybe for the first time complete their educational program, working with academics and financing, and also just being a shoulder to lean on because sometimes what was preventing them from going to school wasn't actually anything related to academics. It could have been a family issue, a death in the family, and other things that prevented them from moving forward. And a large base of the students were women. And I worked in a heavily African American community, and a lot of them depended on me to help them get to the finish line, which is completing their degree. So that's where it all started, stemmed from.
Look, I get it. I feel like our stories are just a different time and different place because identical, really. I mean, we're except for the experience you had when you were 8 years old. I didn't have to go
Mhm,
through that, thank God, but I
mhm.
absolutely know friends. I have a lot of people who I've connected with and know who've had that type of experience. But you
Yeah.
said something really profound. At that time, your identity was stripped from you.
Mhm,
And you basically had no more boundaries, and then you end up in relationships, honestly,
mhm.
toxic relationships,
Very much
probably.
so.
Yeah,
Yes.
that, um
Abusive, toxic.
yes,
Yes.
and end up what I call crummy relationships. Toxic relationships,
Yes.
crummy relationships are, in
Mhm.
my book, the same thing.
Yeah.
I think this is something that a lot of people just don't correlate. Like, your experiences when you're young, abuse of any kind, especially
Mhm.
sexual abuse, it definitely strips you of your identity, but of your boundaries because people have taken it from you so early. And so you have no sense of, I am an autonomous person and I do not have to
Mhm.
accept crummy behavior, toxic behavior because that's all you've known.
Yeah.
And people ask all the time, why don't you just leave? Why don't you just get out of that relationship?
It's
It's not easy.
psychological, but yeah.
Yes, yes,
And you
yes.
have to have some sort of self-worth to even say, I am capable of doing this. Have children, you come up with all these things that prevent you from taking the step forward because you're like, I'm basically, even though it's not safe, you feel like it's safer than being on your own and trying to figure it out. So
Right.
I know that's weird for people to hear, but that's the way sometimes your brain works. When you're
Absolutely.
put in a position where you're in a survival mode, basically.
I think that's so important to highlight. Women who end up or stay in abusive relationships are not there because they want to be there. They're there because they feel like they have no other choice, or that's all they've known in their entire life. So I'm thankful that you shared that part of your story with us because I
Mhm.
think it's so important that women understand that even if you've never been in an abusive relationship, if you've never had childhood abuse, the correlation between childhood abuse and adult abusive relationships are connected. And until you get the therapy, until you get that healing, you're going to continue that same cycle until you finally say, enough, I'm done, just like you did, just like I did.
Yeah. And a lot of times what happens is sometimes it's not even abusive. It's what people label you as a child. And you
Right.
start to take on that identity. You start to take on what other people tell you because your brain is still formulating who
Yeah.
you are. And if somebody is constantly telling you something about yourself, you kind of tend to believe it, even as a child, and that shapes who you become and what you accept. So it doesn't necessarily have to be abusive,
Hmm.
but it turns into sometimes people pleasing. I get this love because my parents expect me to get all A's, so it puts pressure on
Hmm.
you and you start to build that as your personality. It's so important to reevaluate what you tell yourself because you
Hmm.
don't even know if that's your voice or if it's something that was given to you as a child or as a teenager or something like that. I have examples of when I did that too in my early
Hmm.
years of dating. I had someone tell me, somebody I was dating that said they didn't like my jeans. Weird, right? They did not like my jeans. And I was like, maybe there were Levi's at the time. And I was
Hmm.
like, oh, wow, he didn't like my jeans. But it subconsciously, I never wore those jeans again. And then I went to the store one time with my sister. This was years ago. And I was like, you know what? I never wear Levi's. And then I remember And I was like, "Oh, that's why I never wear them." And I was like, "It's
Mhm.
crazy how you can just take on that type of information and it'll store in the back of your brain what somebody else has said about you."
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another thing you mentioned too, that when you're a child, even if you haven't been in an abusive situation, what adults project onto you, the labels they call you, that
Mhm.
has such a deep influence on your life. And it goes both ways too. Because if an adult has instilled in you that you are worthy, you are deserving, you
Yeah.
have a right to say no, you have a right to reject a label someone's putting on you, that can
Mhm.
also shift how you interact with people when you become an adult and how you see yourself, in the
Mhm.
mirror. So I think that's so important to point out as well, and how
Yeah.
important it is for us to how our self-talk too.
Yeah. And I think more people need to give their children more autonomy to say no, because
Yes.
especially in the Black community, that's
Yes.
seen as talking back. You respect your elders. You give people hugs when you don't want to. That's also to me is now that I look at it, is crossing boundaries. Like you're not
Yes.
allowed to say no, I don't want to hug, I don't want to kiss. Even if it's your family, if your child doesn't feel comfortable, you shouldn't force that upon them because you're teaching them it doesn't matter what you want. You have to
Right.
abide by what adults say to do with your own body.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's
I remember I made a lot of waves in my family when I allowed my children to have a voice.
yeah,
And it made the elders in my family real upset because they were
yeah.
like, you need to tell them to do blah, 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 blah. You need to make them do blah. I was like, I don't know. I'm not going to make them do anything. If they don't like certain foods, for instance, like my daughter hated tomatoes. I'm not
Mhm.
gonna force her to eat tomatoes. Now she
Yeah,
eats them because she's had the opportunity to test them out and do it.
yeah.
But to force a child to do something they don't want to do, even when it, like you mentioned, connecting with or being touched by a relative or,
Mhm.
having uncomfortable situations forced on you,
Yeah.
I made a lot of ways. I'm like, look, these are my children and they're going to
That's
have a
good.
voice. They're going to have,
Yeah, it's so important. I think in today's society, people are more aware. They're more, open to it. At least the younger generation are more open to
yeah.
it. Like people like my parents are older, not so much.
Not at all. This is a great segue into boundaries. I know that a big part of your work is about helping women to create boundaries, understand the
Mhm.
importance of boundaries. So, talk more about that and from your work that you did at the university to work you're doing now and how you're constantly giving women the permission to set boundaries.
Yeah, I would say for women, a lot of times we're seen as superwomen. You're
Hmm.
trying to do it all for everybody and to be everything for everybody. But sometimes it's okay to say no
Yeah.
and let that be that. But a lot of people will let people cross their boundaries. They'll say no and make you feel guilty. And I think a lot of times it's just giving yourself permission to say it's okay not to help this time. It's okay if I stay quiet. It's okay if I take the day off. It's okay. Because at the end of the day, sometimes when you don't say no and you take on all these responsibilities and all these extra tasks, you become burnt out or you become ill. I've
Hmm.
seen it with family and friends. They become sick because they're
Yeah.
taking on everyone else's responsibility and leaving their self by the wayside, thinking that other people's lives depend on whether they can help or not. And I'm like, well, what
Hmm.
if, God forbid, you're not here anymore? What are they going to do? Yeah, so it's important. It's very imperative to put yourself first and make sure that your cup is filled so you can pour from a full cup and not running on
Hmm.
fumes and just taking on everyone else's responsibilities as your own. I think that's very hard, especially for mothers.
Yeah.
You have a nurturing spirit. You want to help people,
Yeah.
but you have to be willing to help yourself.
And so I think that even correlates with setting boundaries with yourself. Because I think a lot of times people look at it, okay, well, I'm going to set boundaries with this person, this situation, but what about the boundaries that you set with yourself? So you really don't
Mhm.
have, you're not even positioned to have to say no to someone else because just like my policy is, I don't work after a certain amount of time. And I feel like
Yes.
that's almost easier to set a boundary with yourself because
Mhm.
you're honoring yourself. You are self devoted and then you won't violate your own boundaries or policies. And that just gives other people less leeway, I think, in your life.
Yeah. Because I have family members that will have jobs that demand them, or not even demand, they take on their own identity and responsibility to say, I'm going to answer this call at 10 o'clock at night. I'm
Mhm.
not.
No, no, that's not happening.
Yeah, I'm not. I'll get to it in the morning. The same amount of work that I had then will be there in the morning. I'm not going to take that on. But, some people feel obligated, like, oh, I must do that. And I think it's a form of just the people pleasing. I want to
Mhm.
make other people happy besides myself. And
Exactly.
and that's something that women really should work on, is the people pleasing. What will happen if you just say no? I think a lot of
Right.
times people are afraid of the reaction that people will have, that they won't like them, that they won't fit in, that you're labeled as difficult.
Mhm.
Um, but at the end of the day, you have to live with yourself. And so people will go on with their life, whether you say yes or no, it's going to be okay.
Right, and here's the thing, I don't think anybody's ever died from you saying no. You know?
Exactly.
No one has ever died from you saying no to something that they want that violates your boundaries. And I
Exactly.
feel it goes back to childhood conditioning. It goes back to not having that permission from adults in your life, or even
Mhm.
developing permission for yourself to say no without the threat of someone not loving you anymore, or leaving you, or the abandonment and the rejection. And I think that's a deeper core issue for why we
Yeah.
people please, why we overdo it, overcompensate and overfunction in
Mhm.
our lives, giving people so much room to walk all over us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So the emotional wellness, I know that's also something that you talk about as well. So the emotional wellness and the relationship with boundaries and just a healthy way of living. So what is your philosophy, and how do you guide women to more emotional well-being?
I think you should, in order to guide a woman to emotional well being, you have to ask yourself questions.
Mhm.
Why am I doing this? Am I happy doing this? Um, am I being fulfilled? Asking questions like, does this truly matter at this
Right.
second? And am I happy?
Mhm.
I think a lot of people throw all of that out the window
Mm.
to appease someone else. You really have to sit down and ask yourself those questions, because I think sometimes it's even on automatic. You're just doing the
Yeah.
things without actually asking yourself certain specific questions before proceeding to help somebody else or let someone cross your boundaries. Because a lot of times, myself included, have been just automatically doing things because I want to help this person without sitting
Mm.
down and asking myself these particular questions to see if I should move forward, or if I even have the capacity to even take that on. Be as
Right.
simple as someone wanting to vent to you. You
Mhm.
can tell them, I just don't have the capacity right now. And if
Right.
someone doesn't want to be your friend anymore, or they hang up on you and they're mad, that's a reflection on them, not on you. You
Mhm.
never said, I don't ever want to talk to you again. It's just like, I have my own issues and I just don't have the capacity right now.
Right.
People need to really start asking questions about
Mhm.
what they can handle, what they can't.
I think that's one of the things, 2 things that I feel like we as people pleasers, over functioning in our lives really need to consider. Is the guilt that goes
Mm.
along with kinda shifting and changing and becoming a more boundaried person. And then, like you meant the question you asked, well, if I say no, then what?
Mhm.
Or can you handle the consequences? And I think a lot of times handling the consequences of our no is where people get stuck, because it's
Mhm.
like, what am I going to do with these feelings I have? Because now they're mad at me.
Yeah.
I think that learning coping mechanisms is so important to support your desire and your decision to set boundaries in your life. How have you helped women deal with the guilt and deal with the fallout of their no?
You're a healer, not a help desk. But there you are, 14 tabs open, 3 tools that don't talk to each other, and a quiet knot in your stomach every time something breaks. That's not a you problem, that's a systems problem, and it's quietly burning you out. Samantha Gregory, is a fractional CTO and the founder of Bliss Tech Solutions, as well as a former NASA, Google, and Intuit consultant with 30 plus years of tech and training experience. Now she helps make tech simple for tech-stressed wellness coaches. In one session, they feel calmer and clear on the easiest tech stack for their business. They get their tech to work for them. No hustle, no shame about what you don't already know. Start with the business capacity audit to find out exactly what's draining you and what to fix first. Take the 2-minute audit at blisstechsolutions.com/audit.
Setting a boundary, I think it goes back to you because you can't control the other person, how they feel about a situation. And a lot of times they're upset in the moment, and you can go back to that person and explain. They may not want to hear it right then and there, but you can go back and explain, this is what I've done. I've set a boundary because I feel like, this is taking a lot of my time, or this is something that I really don't want to do. And I want to see you succeed. I want you to be happy, but not at my own expense. And you can tell them, I've set this boundary because I'm working on some things that I need to work on for myself. This is not a personal attack. This is not to shame you in any way, but I can't be that person that you normally would go to for these things because at the end of the day, it's affecting my health, my
Right.
well-being, and I have to make myself a priority. And if they
Mhm.
still don't understand after that, then that's another issue. What type of person are you actually dealing with? Is this someone that's a friend, that's supportive, a family member that actually cares about your well-being, or are they selfish and don't care about your well-being and just want their needs to be met and your needs not to be met? Then you have to
Mhm.
decide, is this a person I want to continue to have in my life? Because
Yeah.
if you're coming to a person honest and telling them this is why I have to do something and they're not understanding, then that's probably a person you need to reevaluate if you want this person in your life. Because again, they're going to bring you stress, they're going to bring you drama, and they're not going to respect you enough to say, I understand.
Right. That's great.
Mhm.
Great advice. And I think this is a really huge pivot. Setting boundaries
Mhm.
is huge. You
It
know,
is.
it it it's life changing. Some people are gonna fall off. Some people are going to,
Yeah.
like you said, be upset. They're going to probably give you a hard time.
Mhm.
But if you stay the course, you are going to find that the burnout lessens, that you don't have it as much.
Yeah.
And I just posted on my social media that sometimes you have to break up with people in your life in order to break up with burnout because they are often the cause of it.
Yeah.
Especially when you've made that decision to have more boundaries, to say no more than you used to.
Mhm.
It's like, I gotta break up with some people. And it's hard. It's hard,
It's
but
hard.
it's
And it's
necessary.
real work. If you're not actually intentional about applying it, then it won't work for you and you'll
Right.
still be in the same situation. Because many women will say, oh, yeah, I have boundaries, but then they really don't have boundaries. They'll
No.
let somebody come in and dictate what they want from them and then they'll go ahead and do it. I mean, it
Mhm.
sounds good in theory, but until you actually put it to practice, then it's a painful situation. It is
Mhm.
because you're changing your beliefs. So it's very painful. It's not easy. And what a lot of women are just scared of what the unknown is, of what this other person
Yeah.
is doing. But I always believe you shouldn't give that much power to someone else over your own life. That person does not control you. And you can't expect someone else to dictate how you should live your life. You will be
Mhm.
miserable,
Mhm.
you will be so unhappy.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that control issue is where a lot of the pushback comes when people start to say no, when they start to have boundaries, because you were, a puppet on a marionette for so many years. And now
Mhm.
you're like, I'm cutting the strings and I'm not doing this anymore. And I think people, they're so used to you being this way, they
Mhm.
are counting on you to be this way. And I wrote an article a while ago about how people are committed to maintaining that type of relationship because it
Mhm.
benefits them more than it
Yes.
benefits. And I think
Yes.
that the reality of that is what a lot of people don't want to face. And a lot of people don't want to have that much responsibility over their own lives to where they start to say no, to where they have boundaries, to where they start to loosen the reins that other people have over their lives. Because that means that I now must be responsible for my
Mhm.
reactions, my responses, my decisions. and no one is pulling the strings in my life again.
Yeah. I think a lot of people also like to have excuses and they can always blame it on someone else
Yeah,
why they are the way that they are. They can just
absolutely.
shift the blame and then
Mhm.
I'm innocent being victimized
Yes.
when you can say no to that at any time. But a lot of people like to victimize and say it's someone else's fault. Why are they
Mhm.
doing this to me when you can just stop it?
Yeah.
That's a
Yeah.
huge responsibility for people though, because
It
'cause they'll
is
see it in
huge.
another light.
And I'm glad we're going even deeper into how powerful boundaries are
Mm,
and the foundation of boundaries, what that
mhm,
really, really means for you. And as women specifically, a lot of times we've been sold a fairy tale. We've been sold the
mhm.
idea that someone's going to come and save us or that we're going to have our knight in shining armor. And that is another form of giving our power away unintentionally, unconsciously, because we see this beautiful picture that has been painted, for us.
Yes.
But the reality is we don't have those type of happy endings often because our lives haven't been set up that way culturally, from a societal standpoint, from a religious standpoint. Our life is not set up that way. And so we get a lot of disappointment, but we still give that power away so that we can have the happily ever after, so we can always have the wonderful life, so that, we can blame other people and give them responsibility for our happiness when I
Yes.
really only is an internal job. It's not an
Yeah.
external thing.
Yeah. When you're giving your power to somebody else, you will always lose. You will
Yes.
always lose. You will always be unhappy. In the beginning, it feels like power. It feels like, oh, I'm helping, I'm doing that. But after a while, you start to get run down. And then
Yeah.
it's like you're giving your power away and now you're letting someone else control you. So
Mhm.
yeah, that can be very exhausting and taxing. The older you get, the worse it becomes because it's now become ingrained in you so deeply that it seems like it's impossible to change. But I've done it, so
Yes.
and
And
then
we
other people have
won't.
done it as well. So it's a process though. It won't happen overnight, but as long
Right.
as you keep at it and
Mhm.
keep doing it, then it becomes habit and then you just are at peace with it. Because at first it was very difficult for me to be like, oh, no, I can't. I have to tell this person, no, I can't let them.
Mhm.
But then I have to think about myself and where I want to be in life and the peace of mind
Yeah.
that I have when I'm doing it. So
Yeah.
it's so worth it at the end.
It is. It's hard in the beginning. It can be challenging in the middle, but at the
Mhm.
end of the day, when you finally put yourself in a place where you have the autonomy and control and sovereignty over your life, you are
Mhm.
so much happier. It is.
Yes.
I wouldn't trade this for the world.
Yeah,
I really, really would.
it's really peace of mind.
It
It's
is.
really peace of mind. When you already know, okay, this is what I'm gonna do. If they don't accept it, I'm fine. If they do accept it, I'm fine as well.
Mhm.
And having a peace of mind, there's no price tag on that that you can't pay for to get peace of mind.
So, what other challenges do you see inside of, wellness and self-care when it comes to Black women?
I think the reluctance of actually seeing that it's a problem. I think a
Mhm.
lot of people overlook or oversimplify what boundaries are. I think a lot of people are assuming, okay, I'm helping them because I want to, and taking on other people's responsibility without really sitting and weighing in on why you are saying, now I'm exhausted or I'm tired or overwhelmed. But are
Mhm.
you overwhelmed with your activities or everyone else's around you? Because that I think there's a shift in the mind where people are taking on other people's responsibility and calling it their own and
Mhm.
thinking, "Oh, I'm in control. I have so many things to do." But are these actually your things, or are there someone else's that put them on your plate and now you feel responsible for them? I think
Mhm.
that's where I see a lot of people have the disconnect and think that they're setting boundaries because they said no once or twice, but then they're overwhelmed with issues and problems that are not even theirs. They're
Right.
somebody else's. So I think that is a big problem that I see amongst our women. And really having a sense of identity. A lot of us have taken on the roles, including myself back then, where I have just taken on the role of what I do and what I
Right.
produce. And that becomes your whole identity. There is nothing else outside of that thing, of what I have become.
Mhm.
And that takes on a persona of itself. And you don't really know who you are. You think you do because I do this as a job and that's
Mhm.
who I am. And it's really much deeper than that. But sometimes people aren't really ready to experience that or explore that
Yeah.
because you start asking, okay, well, what do you do for fun? Or what do you, and I work.
Right. Yes. Yes.
You ask them who they are. I'm a mother. They start giving
Mhm.
you titles instead of who they actually are. And that's a big issue that I see amongst Black women, especially now that we've really exploded as far as like being entrepreneurs, going back to
Mhm.
school. And it's become a big thing where that's how they see their identity and who they are is just a job title or just what I do. So,
Mhm. Yeah, I
yeah.
think that's a really important point to bring up because I think, inherently are not programmed, conditioned, or trained to enjoy our lives or get to know ourselves
Mhm.
because we've always been in service and in labor for other people. So that's why our identity is so muddled, and why it's so unclear about who we are and why we latch on to a job or a role versus this is just who I am as a person and I really like me. But I
Mhm.
think most, okay, I'm gonna say 50% of us don't like ourselves, right?
Mhm.
So because we don't know ourselves, number one, we haven't been given permission to love ourselves deeply, almost obsessively. Number two, so many flaws have been pointed out about who we are. And so getting to know myself may be very dangerous. It may be painful because everybody's always telling me how bad I am, how unorganized, how lazy, maybe. There's so many
Mhm.
labels. And so it's so hard to look at ourselves and really see something of value and worth. So it's easier to latch on to a job. It's easier to latch on to a role
Mhm.
because that's not really me, but I'm gonna let you think that's me.
And I think it also becomes more impressive to other people. So you really
Yeah.
don't have to do any work. You can see who I am by my job title and what I
Mhm.
do. And people gravitate to that and love that. But sometimes, even with that, you've accomplished so much, but you still feel empty. You
Yes.
still feel like it's not enough. I have to reach higher and higher in my accolades because you still don't feel fulfilled or you don't really know who you are. So these
Mhm.
things you think are going to fulfill you and make you happy, and they just end up making you miserable,
That
you
part.
know? And I think a lot of women struggle with that and maybe sometimes don't even know how to put it into words.
Right. Because I remember I used to lead a lot with my job, the company I worked
Mhm.
for, my degrees, and all these
Yes.
things, whether it was talking to family and friends or talking to a man or whatever, I would just drop all the accolades and the accomplishments. And then when I started my healing journey, it was just like, I'm not my accomplishments or the accolades, the degrees, the job titles. And, even though
Yeah.
it's great, I love money, but, it's
Yeah.
like, that's not who I am. And when I finally recognized that, not only did I not know who I was, but the people around me did not know who I was
Ooh.
and it made me sad. And I was just like, wait, I don't like this. And then when I started to recognize that I've never enjoyed life, like full on enjoyed life, like a kid at a playground, I lost that whimsy and the joy and the sense of being alive because
Yeah.
life just felt too hard. It
Mhm.
just felt like it's just one burden after another.
Yeah.
And like you mentioned earlier, you take on so many responsibilities for other people, and your plate is full, and you're exhausted, and you have no time for yourself, and you're just drained. You gave in from the last drop.
Mhm.
But then when you look at, okay, I'm going to do this for me. My plate is full of things that I enjoy that makes me feel good. The tiredness is different. It's like a satisfying tire. Like,
Yeah.
yes, whew, I had a long day. I did a lot of stuff and it made me feel good. I think that's
Mhm.
so different from the opposite, what we have been conditioned and normalized for us.
Mhm. Yeah. And it's really sad because I think a lot of women just assume that this is life, that
Yeah.
this is the way it's supposed to be. My mother did it, my grandma did it, and now it's just a part of what I'm supposed to do. I encourage women to spend time by yourself.
Yes.
Away, take yourself out to dinner, go to the movies by yourself. Do you enjoy your own company? Because
Hmm.
for a long time, I was always surrounded by people. I'm looking for somebody else to entertain me. I'm looking for somebody
Hmm.
else to have fun with. Can you have fun by yourself? Can you go to a concert by yourself? And I know this is terrifying to people to be alone, to go places alone. And I'm like, do you enjoy yourself? Do you
Right.
like yourself? Do you like spending time with yourself? And they're like, oh my God, that's so terrifying. And I remember at a time where I was at that person that was
Yeah.
terrified to go somewhere by myself because I'm like, what will people think? Are they going to look at me and think I'm
Mhm.
weird? I don't have anybody. I don't have any friends? And it's not really about that. It's really about just enjoying time alone, just
Yeah.
enjoying time by yourself. And I think
Yes.
more women need to celebrate that and do that. Take yourself out to dinner, go to the park.
Hmm.
I've done it all. And
Yeah.
what happens is a lot of times people will come up to you and just start talking. You're like,
Mhm.
oh, hi.
For sure. I know that's right. And I'm an introvert. I love my alone time because that's my recharge time. That's when
Mhm.
I get all of my energy back. Because I mean, I enjoy connecting with people and talking and having great conversations, but the alone time is sacred. It is
Mhm.
like I get to know myself, I get to ground and recalibrate, and I get to decide what's the next thing I want to do for myself. Where's
Yeah.
the place I want to go. Right now, I'm planning my trip around the world. So it's
Oh,
like
okay.
I can't do that if I'm constantly being stimulated by other people's chatter, thoughts, ideas about what I need to be doing or should be doing or trying to push off their agenda on me. So that alone time is, like I said, so sacred. And I think when more women get to that place, they'll feel so much more powerful.
Yeah.
It's a very empowering experience to
Mhm.
be alone and with
Yes.
yourself because you get to know yourself so much deeper.
Yeah. It is. And you can find yourself just being fun, just like, oh, I
Mhm.
like to go paint. I like to do these things. And I can do it by myself and spend time alone. I don't need anybody else's thoughts,
Mhm.
opinions, company to be by myself. So
Yeah.
I think that's very important. It took me a long time to get to that point as well,
Yeah.
but it's
Yeah.
possible. And it's so worth it because you don't need validation from somebody else to
Right.
enjoy your own time.
Wow, this has been such an amazing discussion. Thank you so much, Nicole. I would
You.
love to know what you have going on now in your business. Do you have any new experiences, programs, offers that you want to share with us right now?
Yes, I just became the program director for NABU. It's for business women, and they have
Okay.
actually an advocacy program where we help women in business, but also go to legislation to make changes.
Nice.
I just had my first board meeting like 2 weeks ago, so I'm really excited to dig in there and come up with new programs for businesses. The program that I offer is called The Standard because
Okay.
this is the way you should be living your life. And it's not a cookie cutter program. It's specialized for women and whatever they're going through at that particular moment. And I will dive in deep for 12 weeks
Oh,
and come up with some solutions to help you get to be the woman that you were called to be, that you were meant to be.
cool. I love that. And where can we find you and the program online?
Noteworthy with Nicole. And I didn't tell you the little story. It'll be real quick. So before I got into coaching and got my degree in psychology, I used to write and I had a publishing company.
Oh,
So
no.
I've always loved writing. So I was like, oh, you know what? That would be a cute little name. Noteworthy with Nicole.
Mm-hmm. Nice, nice. Okay,
Yeah.
so we can find you at noteworthywithnicole.com. Are you on
Yes.
social media as well?
Yes. I'm on all
Okay.
social media platforms, Noteworthy with Nicole.
Well, Nicole, thank you so much for being here, for sharing your wisdom with us,
Thank
especially
you.
about boundaries and self care and the joy of being alone so you can get to
Yeah.
know yourself. What last word of wisdom would you want to share with a woman who is struggling to find her standard?
I would say take it one day at a time. make sure that the voice that you hear is your own.
I love that. Well, you heard them, her ladies. Make sure your voice is your own. You deserve this. And you deserve to have everything that you've been dreaming about, hoping about, but has been kind of derailed because
Mhm.
of poor boundaries, because of people pleasing, over giving, and over functioning. That is not the life that you were designed to live, but you get to change your life in the way that you want to. It might be hard in the beginning, maybe challenging in the middle, but eventually you'll blossom and you'll bloom and you'll become a woman who's living in her shameless bliss and self devotion. So, thank you for listening to this episode of the Self-Care Oasis podcast. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Leave a comment too on this particular episode. And be sure to follow Nicole online and check out her program, The Standard. Thank you again, and we'll see you again next time.
Thank you.